Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to our highly anticipated webinar, Running Successful on Procurement, Order to Cash, and Financial Functions in the Share Services Model. We are happy to have each and every one of you with us today as we delve into these vital functions within the Share Services platform. I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers, Mr. Ajay Wadhwa. He is the GBS Head and Executive Director at Indorama Ventures, Ms. Shilpa Hiran, Senior Director of Internal Audit and Global Compliance at NetApp, Mr. Rakesh Sinha, the founder and CEO of Quintus Global. Welcome, speakers. I would also like to welcome our moderator, Ms. Amita Dokhale. She is our NASCOM membership manager. And welcome, Amita. Ms. Amita will guide us through the Q&A session, ensuring that all the queries of the audience will be addressed and the insights will be shared. In today's webinar, our speakers will share their knowledge, experience, and the best practices in navigating the challenges and opportunities in the procurement and financial functions of the shared services model. But before we proceed, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to all our participants for joining us today. Without further delaying, let's embark on this journey of knowledge sharing. I encourage you all to actively participate, ask questions, and make the most of this opportunity to enhance your understanding on the uh, financial functions of the share services. Over to you, Ms. Samita. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, Sonu, for the handover. And very good morning to all our viewers. And I, Amita, on behalf of NASCOM, welcomes you all to this interesting panel discussion on running successful procurement and financial reporting functions in shared services model. Running successful procurement and financial reporting functions in a shared services model is crucial for optimizing costs, achieving efficiency, and ensuring compliance. Centralized processes, technology integration, and standardized reporting enhance decision-making, foster strategic planning, and contribute to the overall financial health of organizations in a collaborative and streamlined manner. Before we start this interesting discussion, let me invite and introduce our panelists in the detail. We have Rakesh Sinha, a distinguished professional with over 2 decades of entrepreneurial expertise in advisory, management, consulting, and technology. Rakesh is globally recognized for his leadership in business services and transformation space. As the founder and CEO of Quintus Global, he has spearheaded the establishment and growth of multiple global shared services centers, delivering transformative impact. With a focus on innovation, Rakesh's insights and strategic vision have earned him accolades. He is sought after speaker at prestigious institutes and forums, emphasizing his commitment to mentoring young leaders and contributing to social projects for India's growth. Welcome, Rakesh.
Thank you, Amita.
Next, we have Ajay Wadhwa. Ajay is the GBS head for Indorama Ventures Limited. Ajay is an achievement-driven enterprising business leader with over 20 years of experience in businesses and procurement and process transformation, delivering value-added services across end-to-end processes, change management across geographies, system implementation, project management, financials, and controllerships and compliance. He's experienced in improving process through lean culture deployment and innovative solutions, cutting-edge technologies, and has demonstrated capabilities of building high-performance teams. Ajay has worked with different companies and worked with teams across different cultures prior to joining Indorama, which include Genpact, JP Morgan Chase, AG's, Clariant Chemicals, Johnson Controls, Esco Noble. Ajay is chartered accountant profession. Welcome, Ajay, to this panel.
Thank you, Amita, and hello, everyone.
Last, but not the least, we have Shilpa Hiran. She is a board member, global audit and compliance leader, and an avid supporter of diversity in workplace. She's also the leader of Women in Technology for NetApp India. She has experience in leading teams, working on cross-functional projects and helping companies map and manage risks, and track record of project management of large, complex global consulting projects, combining functional and technical expertise with strong communication and analytical skills. Welcome, Shilpa. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Amita, and hello, everyone.
Now let's start our discussion, and I'll keep the floor open for all of you. It would be good if you can talk about the frameworks and structure of shared services model. How are responsibilities and tasks distributed among shared services team for financial reporting, procurement in the organization? Shilpa, you would like to go?
Yeah, I can start first. So, hi, everyone. As you all can see now that I work for NetApp. And, in terms of the shared services model, I want to say that the way we started or way most of the MNCs started was, you would take directions from your global team. And that's how the back offices used to be set up. We have moved a long way from there in the value chain in terms of, it's not just about taking orders. It's not just about doing those functions which, are only transactional, but there is now decision making happening here. There is now value being provided to our customers, whether it is internal or external. So we have come a long way. And in terms of specifically what we do at NetApp from a shared services perspective, our record to report function, for example, is completely set out of India. And did it start like that? Of course not. It were bits and pieces. And as and when you showcase the talent that we have in India, as and when you showcase the value that we bring to the table, is where more and more work come in, right? So that's the journey in this function. And then slowly the other functions have started moving as well, including not just finance, but IT. And I want to say that finance is always the role model, so-called, in terms of, experimenting what can work out of just the corporate offices. So it's a journey, I would say. We are almost there, but still a long way to go.
Right. I think, Shilpa, you touched upon very interesting points on talent and value, and I'll come back to it. But before that, any other perspective from Rakesh or Ajay?
Just to add to what Shilpa just mentioned, and I would concur with that. But I mean, if I look at it from an overall perspective, now we as professionals or in the companies, we don't need to share about what GBS or shared services can do in India. So there's a lot being done. So
Right.
it's a proven model, methodologies and activities, what is in scope, what is not in scope and all everything. But this journey can be different for different companies. Some companies may start with finance, some companies may start with even engineering, different kind of functions. But what is to be in scope, what is not to be in scope, that goes with the maturity model of the organization. Everything we can't do on day one. I mean, year over year, the scope gets on increasing. But based on my experience of last 5 greenfield setups as well, and the way we have matured over the years, so different activities in finance and activities we have covered: procure to pay, order to cash, record to report, including the reporting functions, MIS, budgeting, forecasting. So all these activities are being done in India for the companies which I've worked for. Procurement, spend analytics, PR to PO process. Even in one of the company, we did the strategic buying as well, spot buying activities as well. So those kind of activities, logistics functions, IT functions. So there's a lot of activities which can be done, and it again depends on what level of maturity and the risk appetite of the organization, which decides what is to be done in India and what is to be done from a retained organization perspective. Just an overall view on that.
Thank you.
I can just quickly add to what both Shilpa and Ajay have shared. I think they have covered quite a lot, but I think if I had to summarize into 3 pockets, the first is the industry has evolved over 25 years. from being a transaction processing center, a back office organization, to a shared services, to business services, to capability center, to value center. And now we actually believe it has to become an enterprise partner. Otherwise, it is going to lose its complete sight. That is point number one. Point number two, as Ajay was talking about, different organization takes a different path. It starts sometime with, again, going with the smaller processes, functional focus, etc. I think what we believe, and I personally, based on my last 20 years of doing this specific shared services, setting up 17 shared services organization, is I think it has to become a strategic initiative. Otherwise, it will die. Point number one. Point number two, I think whatever process functions you want to bring it to the shared services, particularly in procurement and finance and accounting, these two are pillars of the organization. What we sometimes used to call staff functions or corporate functions, they need to become line functions. So the mindset has to be that moving into line functions. Hence, the roles and responsibility, when you are segregating between enterprise and shared services, it has to be seen in that light. For example, what is the kind of structuring model you are trying to create? Are you trying to set up a department within a department, which is a captive unit, so-called shared services of finance and accounting as a subset within a finance and accounting vertical? Or you are creating a separate strategic organization or a business unit, maybe a separate legal entity, which may be better to handle some of these responsibilities. Second is operating model from the roles and responsibility point of view. As Ajay was alluding, I think some of the processes, what we used to believe are more strategic in nature and very difficult to move to the shared services, gone are those days, right? What is only important is, again, strategic point of view, the business needs to be empowered to take final decisions. Rest everything else from a process, you have to move to a mindset of a service. Hence, the service chain, not only the process chain, has to move to the shared services. And last but not least, when you're setting it up, is also financial model. Because what typically happens, if it becomes a cost center mindset, you will remain a cost center and a transaction processing center, whatever you want to be. So structuring model, operating model, and financial model for a shared services becomes very, very critical when you're defining the roles and responsibilities, even within procurement and finance. Back to you.
Thank you, Rakesh. Rakesh, you spoke about the entire transition and change in the services and process, right? Shilpa talked about some of the value aspect from the shared services perspective, right? Any process or services is considered successful when it has business impact and delivers value to the stakeholders. I would like to, like all of you to talk about what business impact and value do you see through these processes and services getting transitioned in the organization, and what impact do you see on the larger scheme of things?
If you allow me, I can go quickly first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Actually, there's a term which this word value has been, and pardon me for my language, I think it has been overly used and abused now. Everybody talks about I've delivered value and value and value. So it's overly used. And that is where we step back as an organization to redefine what value means in an environment like shared services. So what is the definition of value? And we put 3 dimensions to the value. There's a financial gains, and I'll clarify what I mean by financial gains. It's not FT optimization. So financial gains, we talk about second dimension as governance and control, and third dimension as experience. So financial gains here is not just optimizing 1 or 2 FTEs. You can always say, okay, that's also financial gains, but that is given. That is something like, it's given. It's about really the P&L and the balance sheet impact of the enterprise. So how procurement process, for instance, like, Ajay was talking about spend analytics, can take it up to by saying, how can I reduce the purchase cost and not just 2 FTs who are doing a PR and PO, punching. Second, governance and controls. In terms of governance, where it's just not about the statutory compliances, but the internal governance of the organization and also the visibility to the processes. You will find many times when you move the processes or carve the processes out, the visibility results into a different kind of control gaps. and then you plug in those control gaps with the kind of, the redefining the processes. And last point is experience. The experience of internal customers as well as end customer or end consumer is something which has to be kept in the mind when you're defining the processes. That's the way I see it's a value impact. Otherwise, just FT optimization or a cycle time improvement is not. That's the way I believe it. But I'll let other panelists to share their views as well.
And
Yeah,
if I can,
will, yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that, and what you alluded to was, it's a mindset shift. It's all in our minds. It's all started with, it's a cheap labor, cheap country. Let's move ABC processes there to now where it is, business partnership, decision making. From that perspective, things have come a long way. So it's all about how do you want to change that mindset? Do you want to change it by the financial gains, like you talked about, Rakesh, or optimization of resources, or actually redefining your processes in a way that people see the real value out of it, right? So working through people's mind games, if I can say, working through, am I going to lose my job just because this ABC process is going to move away? How do you deal with that psyche of people in this entire environment also plays a very, very crucial role. And that is the strategic initiative that the company has to decide on how, as a whole, you're going to make this a successful way, not just for the company, but for your people as well. So I feel that, whole tackling of that mindset is extremely important when you're designing this whole process. And it shouldn't be limited to a process. It should be, this is our overall finance strategy, or this is our overall procurement strategy. And this is how it fits in the well-being of the employees as well as the well-being of the company.
Any perspective, Ajay?
Sure. Again, just building on what Rakesh and Shilpa have shared. So it has to look at it from three different perspectives. One, from an investor's perspective, so stakeholders who are our customers, and the people. Okay, gone are those days when we were merely looking at what's the labor arbitrage which we are getting and then be done with it. So we are looking at what the real benefit or efficiencies which the GBS is bringing into it. So whenever we have discussion that, okay, what's the real value acceleration which you are doing? And again, it's not only limited to how much efficiency gain you have brought through innovation or technology in GBS, but how you're driving that value in the entire organization, helping them on the working capital optimization through payment term optimization, or through spend analytics, where you are spending money on buying that, why are you spending extra money on that? So it's an overall shift in the organizational value. That is what we are already looking at from the value generation perspective. So that's one. Stakeholders, if I look at it from a customer standpoint, what they are looking at it, it's not just that, okay, the activity which they were doing it from when it was there with them, and now it's being done from India, that activity is happening smooth or not. So it's way beyond smooth functioning of the activities. So are we bringing in the right technologies? Are we providing the best in class services to them compared with the leading shared service or GBS one? So where do we stand, and do they really see that benefit to them, and have their efforts in those transactional or the activities what GBS is doing, have those been taken off or not? Otherwise, they're always in a complaint. The activities have gone, but the work I keep on doing. So are my stakeholders happy, or customers, they are looking at that? Yes, one, we are happy with what's going on, and they are ready to promote more activities into GBS. So that's second aspect. And the third aspect, it is people. So we oftenly neglect the people aspect. These are the ones who are making it possible. So are the people really getting the benefit when they are working with GBS, getting the skill enhancement, getting their career enhancements, and also GBS being an integral part of the overall organization? Do they see opportunities in the larger organization as well? In the past 2-3 organizations, the way we have worked is GBS is considered as talent hub for the organization. And interestingly, if I share an experience in one of the organization, it was made mandatory that any person who has to join the organization has to go through the shared service center or GBS experience for minimum 2 years before that person is taken into that. That's how we can generate the real value from GBS perspective. Sorry if it was a long one, but just wanted to share all the stakeholders.
Very interesting perspective, Ajay. And I think what I believe is this is a journey of mindset shift, positioning, and strategic change management. Ajay, you touched upon bringing efficiency in the processes. So it would be great if you can touch upon how are organizations optimizing, streamlining, and standardizing the process for efficiency and effectiveness. Are there any best practices from industry that our audience should know? So happy to hear your thoughts on the same.
Sure. In fact, let me first of all start this with the myth people have at organizations have about the efficiency, that you can drive efficiencies through adding new technologies or having the bolt-on technologies. So one fundamental principle, I think, which really get the benefit to the organization, apply that Six Sigma or lean methodology while you're driving the efficiency in the processes of work. So sometimes it's just the process break which is driving the inefficiencies into the system. We can just fix that process and get the benefit out of it. So I always encourage that, look at the end-to-end process. And wherever this process is running, whether it is with the retained organization or the GBS, study that entire process, see where the processes are getting broken. Is it the process failure? Or do we really need to bring in a bolt-on technologies to that, or the fundamental ERP itself having an issue? So we need to classify all these issues clearly and then go with those gap fixation to drive real benefits to it. And I'll give a simple example. We reviewed one end-to-end invoice processing process. It was taking that invoice cycle time, if I give that, it was taking 17 days for an invoice to be processed. Now, simple would be, okay, if other organization can do it in 3 days, so what is causing that 17 days? Okay, let's introduce one technology. But when we studied that entire process end to end, this was about 90% of the gaps were the process gaps and the people practice gap, nothing else. And it was fixed in just 3 months.
Excellent. Any other perspective, Shilpa and Rakesh, on how do we bring efficiency in the system?
Yeah, I totally concur with what Ajay said, that the easiest way to try to fix problem is by saying, oh, we need budget. Why do we need budget? Is because we need to buy this new technology or this new system, and we all think that just because we get this new fancy ERP or new customized system is what solves all our problems. Probably not. Maybe yes, right? It's a combination of what really is the need. So having the knowledge to go through the processes to figure out where the gaps are, where the control gaps are, how our risks are getting mitigated, and how the efficiency can be achieved is extremely crucial before making a decision whether a technology is going to solve the problem, people are going to solve the problem, or process fixes are going to solve the problem, right? So it can be a combination of all three. I'm not saying that, only the two will work and the third will not, but more often than not, I don't think people invest that time in figuring the root cause of it, right? So if we take that time to find the root cause where the efficiency lacks is really a great winner, and probably at least you can, catch on things which can be fixed immediately versus a long-term process of, let's say, implementing a new ERP, for example. So extremely crucial for the management and, the entire chain of people to know enough about their process, to have, again, that mindset of wanting to do more, wanting to achieve that efficiency versus a shortcut, if I can say, of, this is the solution. Let's get a new ERP and everything will be fixed.
Thank you, Shilpa. I think this is interesting. Any perspective, Rakesh, before we move to the discussion?
Sure. Absolutely. I think both Ajay and Shilpa picked up a very Nice perspective, and that's the right way to go about. I think just building on what Ajay was saying, and I'll just say, typically I have used two principles. One is a variation principles, and second is, as he was talking about, driving lean to automation, as I call it. So from the variation perspective, there are 5 kinds of variations. And for the audience benefit, it may be helpful to share those 5. There's a practice variation, there is a process variation, there's a technology variation, there's a regulatory variation, and there's a business variation. There are 5 kinds of variations. Interestingly, by doing a process redesign, you can eliminate easily practice process variations and sometimes even technology, because there are legacy reasons for having those variations. This is where you need a bolt-on if you're not able to solve for through the core ERP. The regulatory variations, like, you have some state level, country level variations, you need to follow that, you can't change it. And business level variations, this is where the biggest challenge happens. Everything is tucked in under business. By saying, if I'm running a cement business and I'm running a chemicals business, we'll say cement business runs like this. That's not sometimes true. So this is where you have to split the practice and process vis-a-vis the business, because there'll be something which is very nuanced toward that business that needs to be practiced or kept as a part of the process. Otherwise, everything needs to be eliminated. That's point number 1 as a variations. The second is from the lean to automation point of view. I think there are many principles of lean, but if I had to really say 3 things, which is all about Mura, Muri, and Muda, as we call it, right? The simple stuff, just looking at how to eliminate the waste, how to really bring that inconsistency down, and how to really look at the workload in terms of managing the right kind of balance of the productivity, etc., which is moving from an overburden to the right kind of a load balancing. Now, once you have that, you need to find how to eliminate through automation. So as Shilpa also rightly said, automation is the step next. First, you need to know what you need to eliminate. Otherwise, what happens? You are trying to fix a square in a circle and forcefully further to that, and you are not able to be successful. There has been many instances where the organizations have really failed after buying the technology. In fact, there's a metric which says that more than 90% of the POCs, the digital POCs, have not seen the light of the day. So that's what I would like to leave with the audience here.
Thank you, Rakesh. I think this was an interesting perspective. I think continuous innovation and adaptation to emerging technologies are crucial for staying competitive in today's dynamic business environment. It would be great to hear your perspectives on what role does digital transformation play in supporting shared services operations, and how are technology and automation utilized to enhance the workflow. I think all of you touched upon the automation piece in your previous talks and conversations, but it would be great to hear about what role does automation is playing to enhance the workflow.
I can go first. So right now we were talking about how technology should be your last step when you're sort of redefining your process, right? Because you need to figure out what the root cause of the breakdowns are or why there are inefficiencies. On the other hand, there are a lot of examples of where technology or digitization or RPAs and the AIs are helping the teams. And in my mind, all these technologies are helping us to move from transaction processing to decision making. So it's upon us on how do we want to effectively utilize this technology. Again, it comes to the point of efficiency, right? Do I just want to use this technology to reduce the number of hours that a person was working on? Or do I want to use the technology to free up my hours? Yes, where I can now utilize these hours on some strategic decision making, or figuring out how to do the process better, right? So how do I channelize the energies and the efficiencies of the team as a whole is very important. And this is what all this digitization is helping us to move away from redundant tasks or the boring work that everybody has been doing. Let technology do that. Something that is repetitive, does not require the brain power that we all have. Let technology do that. And then let's move on to the next step of where we can bring the real value as shared services or to the organization by, again, stopping these repetitive work that we were doing. So to me, it's again, thinking through what is efficient for us as a company versus trying to do something just because everybody else is doing. So when the RPA came in, it was just like, oh, there is RPA and everybody has to do RPA. Okay, great. We didn't figure out, we meaning the companies did not figure out where is the real value for that RPA. There were teams I know who spent so much time building the RPA, figuring out how to do it, and then fixing what was not working. And the work could have been done in 5 hours by, let's see, me as a person doing it versus me spending 25 hours just trying to figure that out. And then when you calculate the ROI, it wasn't there. We just used it because everybody's using it, so we have to use it. So coming back to the point of, you have to know what is the root cause of the failure that you're trying to fix before embarking on all these great new things that are coming up.
Interesting perspective, Shilpa. Any other thoughts, Ajay or Rakesh?
Sure. So first of all, thanks, Shilpa. I think you brought in the right perspective to this digitalization. So there's a lot to be done. And then just to build upon that, the digitalization, I think from GBS perspective, as we say that the GBS is part of the organization, very integral to the organization, and that's how we need to operate. So whenever we are thinking of any digitalization or new technology or innovation, it has to be looked at from an overall perspective, so that we are not fixing only one problem in the GBS. We are looking at the overall value chain and driving the efficiencies through that. And there are a lot of digital tools, technologies which are available, which we need to kind of see what is the right purpose technology to solve the current problem at hand, what we have, and the futuristic view of the overall process fixation or overall efficiency driving in the overall organization perspective. So digitalization nowadays is every company's focus, but having the right technology for the right purpose and from an integrated value chain perspective end to end, that is how we need to invest it wisely into that. And I'm not going to talk about those basics, which now we have come a long way of those main basic technologies. There is a era now of Gen AI as well, artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever the human can now think, or what we can do, all these repetitive or daily tasks and all, can everything be done by the machines or by the technologies which are there and all. Just to quote an example, so my PPTs as well, now I can get those things prepared. We are using Copilot in our organization. So whatever I give that this is my Word document, convert that into a nice PPT. That's done in minutes. I don't need to spend time on this. I can spend time on making it more value addition whenever it's going to the audience of it. So my 80% time is saved. But that 80% time which I'm saving, how am I effectively utilizing to drive further value for the organization? So those kind of things also we need to see, that we need to drive that the culture and the real benefits from an organization perspective. It's not about replacing people or letting the people go. It's about using the people for driving the real value for the organization. And that's how these technologies and the new edge or cutting edge technologies are driving the benefit for the organization.
Any perspective, Rakesh?
Yeah, no, sure. I think very well already covered by Ajay and Shilpa. Again, just to put into a framework, if I have to say, you know, the evolution of technology has come so far that, like, there was a term which we always used about 20 years ago called IT services and IT enabled services. So all shared services was called ITES. And for good 20 years, we continued this ITES. Actually, we as an organization challenged that ITES and said, okay, how long you will remain IT enabled? And this is where we coined a term called tech integrated enterprise services. We are saying it's now about technology needs to be integrated, and hence it is not about process separately, technology separately. So when I was talking earlier about redefining the processes, it needs to be built along with the automation or a technology as a part of it very clearly. And there's a term which we again use called transformation in a box. So it is not about only technology. It's when you're driving a transformation, you look at the process, service, experience, change management, and technology all into a box, and then see how you are trying to drive it. That's point number 2. Now, how to look at some of these technology for any shared services organization under this, the whole principles of tech integrated enterprise functions or services, if I have to say, we look at into 3 buckets of technology side. The 3 buckets of technology side is your foundational technology, your functional technologies, and your transformational technologies. There are some foundational technologies like ERP, right? Workflow systems, BPM tools, what we used to say, document management system. They're all foundational technology. If you want to run a shared services organization, if you don't have some of that in the place, you will struggle. So they're not transformational in the nature. That is something which is like staple now, which is required. That's important. Now, having said that, you need to also figure out what kind of variations, like people, there are organizations which have multiple ERPs, multiple instances of the ERPs. So how are you going to really focus on that? Well, on the other side, you have an extreme of saying, as Ajay was talking about, everybody is talking about artificial intelligence and trying to throw it. Actually, I can give you examples. I talked to a lot of people. There have been few board members and the CFOs reaching out to me and saying, we have a budget. Can you help me by saying I have to deploy an AI? Can you recommend an artificial intelligence, Rakesh? And I said, why are you trying to do that? Have you got a sense of what is your opportunity? So because they have a budget from the board, they want to do it and they're asking for the recommendation. So foundational technology as a layer has to be seen very differently and has to be focused while you're trying to drive a digital change. Second layer is the functional technologies, like we're talking about here very specifically on procurement and in terms of financial accounting and reporting. Now, I can still share with you every time when somebody will talk about technology, digital, the examples in finance will be accounts payables. Very limited on the reporting. Right. The reason being is reporting usually does not gives you yield of FT optimization immediately. And we always look at an ROI when we are trying to buy a technology. As Shilpa was talking about budget, FT optimization becomes an easy route to say, okay, there's a payback. While reconciliations and financial integrity has a huge impact where we are not able to define the value. So if you're able to define the value, you will find that we have a business case, a financial business case, not just strategic business case, a financial business case created. So functional technologies, like when Ajay was talking about logistics and procurement, people used to talk about PR to PO, but how about, strategic buying or request for quotations and compiling that quotations and giving the order? There's a lot of great functional technology which is available and provide you a value from that perspective. The third tier of transformational technologies, where we're talking about now, everybody's jumping to things like generative AI. I can vouch for it, and we actually was a part of a session where we were talking about what is the difference between AI, AGI, and generative AI. And I can tell you there's a poll question and half of the audience were not clear. So because it has become a trend, so we are jumping for that. So my submission would be that we should not jump for that. We should just look at what is right for you. And as we look at these 3 things, it is also very important to look at other dimensions, like what is about your people side of it. Is it really going to help your people and also the customer? That is also very, very important when you're trying to drive this kind of a change. But yes, we should not be living in those stone age where saying only foundational technologies are good. We have done everything, it is good enough, or we just deploy one bolt-on solutions or one AI solutions and say we have become whatever artificial intelligence driven organization. That's not true. It has to be a transformation in a box, holistic. As Ajay used the word, I'm drawing it from there. Integrated enterprise function is very, very important, along with integrated technology in technology driven enterprise function is something which I'll say is important.
Thank you, Ajay. I think, thank you, Rakesh. This was very, very interesting. I think you touched upon very interesting perspectives, right? I think technology has given us the opportunity to innovate and experiment. I would love to hear some of the case studies around organizations leveraging open innovation and ecosystem collaboration to create that business edge. Any thoughts around some of the collaborations happening within the ecosystem around with startups, with academias, etc.? Shilpa, you want to go?
Sure. So for us, we recently collaborated with a couple of startups to sort of help us figure out where are some of the efficiencies that we can derive, not just from technology perspective, but from people perspective as well. So, when we move so many jobs to these shared services, when we move so many processes, there is always a lift and shift. You are just moving, right? You're not necessarily focusing on optimization at that point in time. It is just like, okay, move from A place to B place. Now that that process runs smoothly, that everybody is in line with, okay, this works great, and there has been no complaints and whatsoever, is where you start now thinking about optimization. And again, now optimization is not about cutting down people. Optimization is not necessarily about bringing in new technology, but working through the innovation of creating better efficiencies and better processes for the company, right? So how do we do that? Where are some of those? And when people, and this is again a psyche thing of human beings, right? We get so used to doing what we are doing that we do not necessarily find that there is a need or a room for improvement, right? Because everything is working smoothly, there have been no complaints. What's the need? Right? So how do you generate that need in people's mind to say that, is there something that we can do better? Only it's, when we realized was just like people started saying that, is there anything more that I can do? Or, not necessarily getting bored with what I'm doing, but getting redundant with what I'm doing, right? So how do you improve that workload for a particular person versus having them do versus giving them just more work, right? How do you optimize that workload itself that makes it interesting for each one of us to work? So that is when we reached out to a couple of startups, and NetApp has an accelerator program where we basically every 6 months pick a few of the startups and we work with them jointly on some of the problems that they are facing or some of the problems that we are facing, right? So every 6 months we have that program, and this time we specifically picked a couple for finance to sort of help us deal with this people aspect as well as the process aspect. So it's hugely beneficial when you have different people, different mindset, different brains coming together from different technology perspective, from different age perspective, if I can say, gender perspective, if I can say. The diversity in that perspective brings so much value to the table to help you think through what can you do better. And that's where the need arises, and usually, as I was saying, you just become so complacent with what you're doing that you never feel the need. So how do you generate that need itself is a big point, and that's a huge way of collaborating amongst different companies or in your entire collaboration space.
Thank you, Shilpa. Any perspective, Rakesh, Ajay, before we proceed?
Yeah, just to add to what Shilpa was just referring to, this ecosystem, which is important, and how she's driving that. So when I talk about ecosystem, I look at it both the organizational ecosystem, which should adapt to whatever the transformations which need to be driven, or the technology, or the new projects which needs to be driven. So this collaboration within the organization, that ecosystem should support that. That's how we can transform the entire organization or change the ways of working it. So if I take an example, if we have to drive the digitalization or innovation agenda, the entire ecosystem, including IT, digital, procurement, finance functions. So all these functions need to come together to understand what is needed, why is it needed, what the benefits, and how that can be done, and who will play a role in the overall scheme of things. So that's my internal ecosystem. But when I have to involve the external ecosystem, like you talked about new startups and all, first need to create a platform for them in the organization, so that what is it that they can help us with. And Shilpa, as she mentioned, that sometimes we are so bogged down in the regular activities, we are not able to bring in that fresh perspective. So these new organizations or new startups really help us in understanding that what exactly the value they can bring in. And I'm working with two startups, and they are closely aligned with NASSCOM actually. So they are really benefiting me to understand so what exactly the new technologies are there in the market, and helping me understand the entire process end to end. But first, before I could do and connect with those startups, I had to do pitching in the entire organization. These are the organization. They are sponsored by NASSCOM. They know and understand the overall GBS aspects and the overall organizational demands and needs as well. So they can help us on that. So bridging these two and then bring him then on board, and also that's what we can help them and be benefited in turn with that.
Thank you, Ajay. I think glad to hear that you're working with some of the NASSCOM supported startups as well. So glad to hear that. Rakesh, you have any perspective, or
Yes.
should we move ahead?
No, I can add few quick pointers. I think this is a very close to my heart topic, if I have to say, the collaboration and partnering with ecosystem. Actually, I this is something which I very strongly believe. The shared services, either the global business services, global capability center, as they claim to be the partner of choice to their enterprise by building that capability, same time, they also need to appreciate that fact that they are not best for everything themselves. And hence, they need to onboard right partners. Actually, like, typical automobile space, as we call it, shop made versus bought out. So what you need to build yourself, you need to know, like, for example, some of the transaction processes, they're doing themselves. Now the world has evolved so much, they should be also evolving as a capability center or a value center. You can't just evolve a value chain by just changing the name of your organizational unit. You need to find out what you are eliminating, some of that activities, to bring the right partner who can do that kind of a work for you is very, very important. Second, I think when it comes to the ecosystem, there are enormous software product companies now growing in India. And thanks to the leadership from NASSCOM and support from NASSCOM, there are many of them. And one of the things which we have done as an organization is we have created a framework called, transformation capability as a service. And we have become an aggregator. And I'm very proud to say that we have got more than hundreds of those startups as a part of our product companies, not services company, because India has been famous as a services company, a lot of services company, and you buy products always from overseas. I'm talking about product solutions. We have got those products as a part of our wings, where we say, okay, what is best fit for you? What is right fit for you? And so on and so forth. In fact, there are research which we have done to say, if a product A, which is a global product, which provides you 100 features and cost you $100, for instance, utilization of this 100 features is very rare. In fact, sometimes we end up utilizing only 25 features or 30 features. Now, 30 features means $30 instead of $100 for you. And I can get to those 30 features, not even in $30, but maybe sometimes in $10, which is 1/10 of what you're spending on your product, just because it's a global need. That's the way we are looking at in terms of providing some of that as a part of ecosystem. The another dimension I wanted to share with you, that we have done some of the AI ML organizations, which are US based, Germany based. They were not typically famous in the shared services space. We brought in to them to India, and actually we did some last 2 years of creating use cases on shared services environment by saying how that can be used. And they are very glad to collaborate on many areas, again, on a lower cost as compared to many other, global AI ML solutions. Last point is very important. When you're trying to build a collaborations, it is not opportunistic. It is a strategic. And that's why you need to create, actually, I say, if you want to really use collaboration to outperform or co-create value, you need to have 3 C's. The first C is you need to have a culture of collaboration. and you build it top down by saying, I need to have a culture of collaboration. So everybody thinks that, okay, I need to collaborate within, and it's a collaboration is a big thing. So I want to get into collaboration as a term to define it here, but I'm more talking in the context of your question. It's a culture of collaboration with partners is something, and right thing is something which had to build. Second one, it's about the construct of this collaboration. We should always start with, like Ajay was talking about, solution thinking, then by saying, okay, instructing them and saying, okay, please fill this gap. You have to start from a typically, I say, design thinking approach where the partner comes along with you, co-create that solution. That's where the construct of solution becomes important. Otherwise, you will find many of this collaboration fails. And the last but not least is commitment to the partnership excellence. Many times we partner with an ecosystem. I have been a partner to many organizations and other way around both. And I've seen being a partner, they will say, okay, now I've given it to you, figure it out. And they'll say you are, while through the entire process, they will keep instructing, but they'll say when the problem will happen, they say, you are the doctors, you have not really, you are the experts, you are supposed to, provide the right ideas, etc. So this is where the gap is, where you have to trust that partner and commit to the partnership excellence. Otherwise, many of this collaboration are only just, good English and intent. They really don't see the success. That's a few things I would like to share from the collaboration point of view. Amita, back to you.
Thank you, Rakesh. And I think you touched upon the collaboration aspect and also talked about the importance and why it is the need of hour today for the organizations to actually look at the collaboration in a different way and collaborate and co-innovate with the ecosystem. I think with that, I would like to shift the discussion to a different angle. For shared services, the compliance and regulatory requirement is something which is very stringent and important. I wanted to hear your perspectives on how compliance and regulatory requirements are ensured, what measures are in place to manage and mitigate risk associated with these processes across GBS.
I can start on that since that's my function. The key is to not make compliance your afterthought. That is the key. You have to have it in your mind all the time when you're designing your process, when you're buying a new technology, when you're assessing a new tool. It should always be a critical component of your decision making. When you make it as your habit versus an afterthought, there is never a challenge in making sure that you're compliant with whether it is regulatory bodies, whether it is your own internal compliance, or whether you have to comply with the law where your corporate offices are, right? So again, it's a big mindset thing that, we will call the compliance team once we are ready with everything. And now you come and look at it, and then it's too late to either tell them what needs to be done or re-engineer things or waste money, resources, and time on figuring out how it needs to be done so that we are compliant with whatever laws that we are trying to comply with, right? So I would say the basic and very important point is to not make it an afterthought, but make it as part of your decision making.
Thank you, Shilpa. Any perspective, Rakesh, Ajay?
Yeah, I think I'll just add very briefly to that. I think as Shilpa said, she's authority on that specific topic. Having said that, I think as she very rightly said, it has to be very much integrated when you're doing it. It's not an afterthought. Also, it is important to look at really sometimes, there are two sides of the story. Sometimes what happens under the name of compliances or regulatory variations I was talking about, there are many things which you still try to, customize. And because you customize, you over customize, and you're not able to get the benefits. So that real segregation of compliance and the control to whatever you are trying to do more as a practice has to be segregated. If you don't segregate that, you will not be able to get the value out of it. That is very important. Second is, it is not just about statutory compliances. It is also about your internal governance, internal control. I think these 2 points, I just wanted to add to whatever Shilpa has already said.
Thank you, Rakesh. I think any perspective, Ajay, or we should proceed?
Let me just add, so Yeah, Shilpa, you are the best person to answer all these aspects. But just to add, and I completely agree with when Shilpa was saying it has to be ensured uh, through design rather than accident. So that should not be the practice in the organization. But this process compliance or regulatory compliance is not the responsibility of the compliance team only. The culture has to be that the entire organization is responsible. Every individual is responsible for ensuring and adhering to the required policies, regulatory laws, and the process compliance is what is needed. So that level of culture needs to be inculcated in every person, and it should be a part of KRAs, and that's what I make sure that process compliance and these policy compliance is part of everybody's KRAs, and there is a zero tolerance to non-compliance. So that's important to ensure that we are compliant to these aspects of it.
Thank you, Ajay. I think this is helpful. This brings me to the last segment or last question for the day. And I think which is very important to talk about is what key performance indicators and metrics are monitored to evaluate the entire success of a shared services model. I think it will be good for audience to know about how are you measuring, what kind of metrics, what kind of KPIs need to be adhered to and looked at to measure the success of a shared services processes or model.
So Amita, if I can take this question.
Sure.
So there are standard KPIs, SLAs, and metrics which are available for each different process or sub-process which can be measured. And the structure which I normally provide to these SLAs and KPIs is input, process, and output KPIs. So that then again, you look at the end-to-end value chain of that process and fix the entire process and see where the gaps are and who needs to work on what. And again, this structure is not to finger point that this is an input problem, I don't need to do anything, but it is that how I can drive the change in the upstream processes to make the entire process change. Like if I kind of give an analogy to the manufacturing process, if my raw material is not good, then my machinery or my internal process will have to do a lot, or even after spending a lot of resources and budget to it, my output, which is going to the customer, will not be good at all. So that's why it's important that we fix input, we fix process and the desired outcome. But after that, again, there are some KPIs which are important at different points of time. When you are starting a process, so then your process KPIs or input KPIs are more important. Then when you mature, then your further KPIs, because again, going by the lean methodology, whatever is fixed, whatever is green, you leave that and you focus on what is more important. So the business outcome, your working capital, how much efficiencies which we are driving towards the organization. The through spend analytics, are we seeing that how much money we are spending on X item and why we are not spending on the other item, how we can aggregate the overall spend, how we can bring in those benefits, and the stakeholders who are receiving these services or output from us, what is important to them, we break it into our KPIs and measure it. So it's again not one recipe for all processes or all organization. It has to be customized to the need of the hour and need of the business. So that's how we need to take that.
Very interesting, very interestingly summed up. The customization as per the business and the organization's KPI needs to be there. Any perspective, Rakesh, Shilpa, before we conclude the discussion?
Okay, I can go quickly here. I think, as I just said, I think, of course, it has to be contextual from the organizational point of view. But there are 4 or 5 buckets of metrics, I would say, the shared services starts or needs to start focusing on. Usually, they spend a lot of time, as Ajay was saying, on operational metrics. And again, I have widened the term operational metrics, not leaving only to the typical SLAs and KPIs, like, what is our turnaround time, what is our cycle time, what is our accuracy. I think that was always given now. So I'm assuming that that is something which has to be followed, which is all your lead time, cycle time, turnaround time to accuracy, etc. But beyond that, looking at even the capacity metrics. So the operational metrics should have service metrics and capacity metrics. Very, very important. The second dimension I will say is a financial metrics. And financial metrics here is not the shared services financials, but the enterprise financials, by saying how are you contributing to either top line or the bottom line of the organization, or on the balance sheet side by financial integrity, etc., is very, very critical. If you don't have an outcome metrics defined on that, it is not going to be meaningful. You will remain a back office center, you will remain a transaction processing center, whatever you do. The third one I will say is a brand and reputational metrics, which is about not again the shared services brand and reputation, but the enterprise brand and reputational stuff. How are you contributing to that? Again, here the people part plays a very important role, because you build the talent, and the talent sometimes even go out and they carry the brand and reputation along with it. So brand and reputational metric is very, very important to be focused. The fourth one is a compliance metrics. I think you need to have compliance focus and compliance metrics to say what kind of outcomes which we're talking about by managing from the shared services. And the last but not least is about transformational and experience metrics. For example, everybody talks about automation, but what about single source of truth? I can tell you, I have done a research on that. 9 out of 10 organizations, they don't sometimes provide a single number if it is the same question is asked to 3 different functional heads, a procurement head, a finance head, an HR head. If you ask some fundamental simple questions, they will give you 3 different numbers, because they track the same metrics very differently. So what is the single source of truth? So transformational metric is also going to be important, and the experience metrics of finding. So if I had to summarize, operational metrics, including service and capacity, functional financial metrics, which is more of top line, bottom line, brand and reputational metrics, compliance metrics, and last but not least, transformational and experience metrics. I'll say these are a few things which shared services now need to take a lead to track.
Thank you, Rakesh. This is interesting. We will now go to audience questions, and then we'll conclude the session. So there's a question from audience which says that, how do an organization balance the need for standardization across shared services with the requirement for flexibility to accommodate diverse business units or regions on different geographical locations? Any perspective from anyone?
So, Amita, if we can take that. So basically, if I understand the question right, it's how do we balance the standardization or work on the standardization when we have a fragmented system and the process? So if I understand your question right.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll share it from my experiences as well. I can understand when you are having fragmented processes and fragmented system, it becomes difficult when you're working on the standardization of the processes. But the standardization is actually non-negotiable. When the processes are centralized in the GBS environment or a shared service center environment, so there we always have room for standardization and room for process optimization as well. It's not just because it is with GBS we have to do that, but through the economies of scale, and also we are able to view the process end to end under different technologies. So my technology touch point could be different, but my processes would remain the same. I would say 80% process remains the same. So even if I leave 20% out of the game from a standardization perspective, but still 80% of the process I can work on how do I standardize across business segments or across entities or whatever the segmentation of that particular entity is. That's the real value add, and that's how we can create the value for the organization and generate benefits for them as well.
Thank you, Ajay. I think this was helpful. With that, would like to conclude the session today. I would summarize, the discussion was very insightful and interesting. We discussed on how achieving success in procurement and financial reporting within a shared services model hinges on strategic technology integration, streamlined processes, and continuous improvement. A well-orchestrated approach supported by a robust system fosters efficiency, cost optimization, and compliance, which are the key elements in driving sustained success and value for organizations embracing shared services. I would like to thank each one of you for joining us today. Would like to thank Shilpa, Rakesh, and Ajay as well for joining us. This was very insightful conversation. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sonu.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, participants. It was really a very insightful discussion, engaging also. So, a very, very thank you to each and every one of you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It was
Thank you.
very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
inviting
you.
us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good one.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Good to
Bye.
be.
Bye bye.